Welcome to the 2024 Army-Navy Virtual Pep Rally. Hello, everyone. I'm Goshay of the Paramount Veterans Network, and I'm an Army veteran serving 5 years in the United States Army as an infantry officer. Today, our Army special guest is former Black Knights quarterback Ronnie McAda. He was a 3-year starter from 1994 to 1996, where he won 19 games in his career. He also was a 3-time winner in the Army-Navy game as the starting quarterback. Thank you again, Ronnie, for joining us. So let's hop right into the interview. First question we have for you today. Why did you choose to attend the United States Military Academy?
So I was a 3-year starter in high school, had a lot of different opportunities to look at until my senior year. I blew my knee out. And back in 1991, 92, when that happened, that was a pretty big deal. So it wasn't like today where they could clean it up and make it stronger, than it was before. So a lot of the schools that were looking at me actually fell away. And my head coach pulled me in his office and said, "Hey, I know Army's looking at you. Have you sent in your information to them?" And I'm like, "I don't know who Army is." Never knew anything about West Point. My dad was in Vietnam, but barely spoke about it. And my grandfather was in World War II, but we just weren't the type of family that talked a lot about military and their service. And so my goal in high school was to go to a top tier academic school and play Division I football. So when my coach sat me down and started talking to me about West Point, then I got intrigued and was like, "Yeah, I need to go on a visit." So I went up on a visit, and the first thing they showed me was the Army-Navy game. And being from Mesquite, Texas, we had a big rivalry. North Mesquite was always a big rivalry. I'd been a part of it for 9 years because my sister actually went to North Mesquite, and then we moved over to the other side, and I went to Mesquite, and I ended up playing against North Mesquite 3 times. And so watching the Army Navy game, I was like, "Man, this is like the North Mesquite game, just a lot bigger." Well, little did I know it was way bigger than that, but that got my interest, obviously, and then the academic side of the school also got my interest, and so from there, I kind of let everything happen to see what was going to happen, and when it came down to it, that was the best opportunity for me.
What are some of the greatest moments for you while you were at Army? I'm certain some of them may include Army-Navy games.
Well, to be honest with you, those I played in 3 of those, and it's funny because my freshman year or my plebe year, I sat in the stands, never dressed for a single game, didn't get to see the field at all. Watched the Army Navy game from the stands. I was bummed about that. Obviously, I'd rather been on the sidelines at least in uniform. But getting to watch Rick Roper and them come back and win that game was amazing. And so I was third string as a freshman. When I say third string, I was third string out of the freshman. I was number 9 overall. Um, my coach, I'm a 6'3", 190-pound, 4'7", 40 guy. I'm not your typical option quarterback. And the coach at the time was like, "Good luck. You're kind of slow, you know." And so I really wasn't sure I was ever going to get a chance to play. And it just so happened I ended up being fourth string going into sophomore year. Luck, I say luck on my side. It really bad luck for some of the other guys. Rick Roper tore his ACL, which was terrible. Mike McCovid had a bad ankle sprain, and eventually I worked my way in and got to start. I think it was against Wake Forest, maybe the 4th game of the year. And when Mike McCovic came back, he and I kind of split time there at the end, but I got to start the Army Navy game. So you asked me what some highlights. I mean, the Army Navy games by far. We won 3 Army Navy games when I was there by a total of 7 points. And I was blessed and lucky enough to be named MVP of all 3 of them. So I think I'm still the only Army quarterback to ever beat Navy 3 times, if I'm not mistaken. And so I hold that high. That's one of my the pride that I have of being an Army quarterback, and that's one of the things I let people know is like, I got to play in 3 of them. We won all 3 of them, and I was lucky enough to be MVP in all 3 of them. So
That is terrific. 3 for 3. We love a 3P, especially versus the Navy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Uh, Speaking on winning 3 for 3, there was a special moment in 1995. Could you talk us a little bit about the drive?
Woo. Yeah, you're going to give me goosebumps thinking about that. The score at the time was 13-7. Navy was beating us. They had the ball 4th and goal at the 1. They went for it on 4th down, didn't get it. We got the ball on like the 6-inch line or something that was really close to the goal line. And I remember at the time there's about 8 minutes, 8.5 minutes left in the game, and we were just trying to get it off the goal line, just trying to get us some room so we at least we could punt, right, instead of giving them the ball down there in the field again. And John Conroy went for like 12, 13 yards. So that got us off the goal line. And then from there, it was just 5 yards here, 4 yards there. All of a sudden you pick up a big pass play for 15 yards. Next thing you know, there's 3 minutes left in the game and we're still moving the ball. And then 2 minutes left in the game, we're still moving the ball. And then we get down, have a couple bad plays. I got sacked, took a bad loss. We end up with a 4th and 24 from the 28-yard line. So you're an option team. Most people are looking at you, I'm sure, going, it's over. 4th and 24. They're not gonna connect on this. And one of my best friends, John Graves, played wideout for us, and he ran a post corner play. The funny thing is, we worked on this play almost every day in practice, and just so happened that it was a perfect time to call the play. I remember in the huddle, I told the guys, I said, hey, you got to give me time to throw this. And Joel Davis looked at me and said, don't worry about it. You got it. Guys did a fantastic job of blocking. I mean, I go back and watch it, and just the pocket that was there that I stepped up in was ridiculous. John made a great move on the corner, which my understanding is the corner had gotten hurt before that play, and so they had a backup corner in. He got him turned around completely. When I threw the ball, I actually thought, man, I hope I didn't lead him out of bounds with this ball, because I was throwing it towards the sidelines, and he caught it and went out of bounds at the 1-yard line. And then 2 plays later, John Conroy, knocks it in from our fullback, and we win the game 14-13. But yes, it's that's definitely a highlight of my career. I actually still watch that drive every once in a while. Still get goosebumps about it. And I remember during that drive, I was in the zone. Didn't hear the crowd, didn't hear anybody else, nothing else, just the play, every single play at the time, until it was over. And then when John caught that pass, it was like everything rushed out of me. And I remember pointing at him and just going, you're the man. And it was an amazing feeling.
And then we have to jump into this, Ronnie, following up the drive with you being etched into the Army-Navy just lore because of an improbable comeback the following year. And what were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, that was a crazy game. It was hyped up really well. We had 9 wins. Navy had 8 wins. The winner was going to go to the Independence Bowl. And back then, that was a big deal. They didn't have 40-something bowls or whatever they have today. There was 20-something bowls back then, right? So nowadays, you win 9 or 8 games, you're going to a bowl game. The loser wasn't guaranteed to go anywhere. So besides the fact of the Commander-in-Chief trophies on the line, you're playing Navy. This is also our first opportunity to have a chance to go to a bowl game. And things didn't go well the first quarter. We turned the ball over a couple of times, which we hadn't done all year. I think I was on the field for 1 turnover the entire year leading into that game, which for an option team is pretty remarkable. And we had a couple turnovers. They scored some touchdowns. They were up 21-3. I remember on the sidelines after they scored 21-3, defensive players came off the field. Obviously, someone with their heads down a little bit. And I grabbed Tony Bianchi, one of my classmates, and I looked him straight in the eyes. I said, man, we're not losing this game. Offensively, we went back out on that field, and I always make fun of the middle linebacker for Navy, Clint Bruce. He and I actually played high school football together. He was at Garland, I was at Mesquite, or he was at South Garland. Sorry, I was at Mesquite. And then we ended up playing against each other at academies. And every time I see him, of course, he looks like a big old grizzly bear. He's a big old man. And every time I see him, I'm like, hey, you remember when I ran you over in the Army-Navy game? Because I did run the midline option up the middle. Wasn't really that I ran him over. He kind of hit me, and when it did, I just kind of jumped up in the air and bounced off of him and then took it 45 yards for a touchdown. But in my mind, I ran him over. So I let him know that counts. Yeah. So that started the comeback. Gerald Tykwinkle got an interception later in the half, and we ended up kicking a field goal and cutting that score down. and then Bobby Williams takes one 80 yards, to start the second half, and we're right back in the ball game. And I didn't know it at the time that it was the largest comeback in Army-Navy history. I think it still stands as the largest comeback in Army-Navy history, down 21-3. But again, like I said, I played in 3 Army-Navy games, a total of 7 points between the 3 games. By far, the most fun I've ever had in my entire life playing football.
It sounds like it, just reliving those memories. I wish that I was there to enjoy to be a part of that. Because I mean, back-to-back years of just a true reason of why we love sports, but also a microcosm of what we do in the military. Of you never quit, you never give up, fight to the last very inch. Which that just amazing to hear you tell those stories back.
Well, it was fun. And you're right. You never quit. And that's the main thing about, both those teams. They're neither one of them are going to quit. So our coach always said, it doesn't matter what the records are. It's a 60-minute game when you play in this football game. And it doesn't matter this year. I know Army's dominated. Navy had some good, started off well and lost a couple. This game's going to come down to 60 minutes.
Moving forward after your career, your terrific career at the Army, what did it mean for you to be selected by the Green Bay Packers in the 1997 NFL Draft?
Yeah, that was a surreal moment for me. I had talked to Ron Wolf, who was the general manager of the Packers. He had told me that they would probably sign me as a free agent after the draft. I was actually watching the draft because our tight end, Ron Lashinsky, was predicted to go in the draft, probably in the 3rd or the 4th round. The Cincinnati Bengals actually called him twice and said they were going to draft him and didn't draft him, which was a bummer. He should have been drafted earlier, but he ended up signing with the New Orleans Saints as a free agent after the draft. So I'm sitting at a colonel's house. Colonel Fox was a mentor of mine at West Point. And there's about 7 picks left in the draft. I'm watching, and next thing I know, I get a call from Ron Wolf. And Ron says, "Hey, we have the last pick of the draft. We're going to take you with it." Of course, I didn't know what to say. I'm like, okay, awesome, great. And but back then, the funny thing is, so I start calling my parents, right? Because nobody knew I was going to get drafted. And I called my mom, and of course, this is before cell phones. That's how old I am. So, but yeah, that was a surreal moment. That was kind of unexpected to be Mr. Irrelevant. I didn't know what Mr. Irrelevant was. I tell everybody now is Mr. Irresistible. I know I like that one better. But yeah, it was neat. I mean, it was a neat time. Got to go to California and spend the week out there. They did a great job. Took me on a yacht race, went to Disneyland, got a Rolex watch out of the deal. Still have that watch. But yeah, it was cool. The funny thing about that is, and I use that today because most people, especially now that Brock Purdy is doing so well as Mr. Irrelevant, so it makes it easier. People understand what it is. But it's a great conversation starter for me because I'm always like, when I'm talking to people about football, I'm like, well, you do know that I was the pick right before Peyton Manning. And people are like, wow, that's awesome. And then they go, wait a second, wasn't Peyton Manning the first pick of the draft? I said, yeah, he was first pick in 98, but I was the last pick in 97. That always gets a good laugh out of them.
And after concluding your NFL career in 2001 with the Denver Broncos, can you give us a little insight into your military service career?
Yeah, so I actually went to the military in 97. So I went to camp with the Packers and then went to officer basic course at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and then went to Fort Hood, where I was with the 442 Field Artillery Unit and attached to the 166 Armor Unit. And I was only there for about 18 months. I had a great time. Luckily, Ron Lashinsky was there with me, the tight end I was telling you about. So we worked out together, we hung out together. And then, but yeah, I had a good time. I was out in the field a lot there working on Task Force 21. Got to see some of the new stuff that was coming out into the military for the soldiers. And it is a hurry up and wait, just like they say in the military. We were out in the field for 6 days and wouldn't get to fire anything off for the first 5 days. And then you pull everything back in and go back in. But had a good time, enjoyed it. A lot of great people in the military. I wish those guys the best all the time. Sacrifice that they do. And I was only in for about 18 months. So, it was a short period. I wish that we would have got to go do the NFL thing first. And then if we didn't make it, we could have gone into the military, which is what we tried to do. But the DOD didn't want us to do that. So it didn't work out that way. But Yeah, it was short-lived, but enjoyed every minute of it. And I recommend it for anybody. Honestly, I think everybody should serve their country for at least a couple years.
I'm right there with you, Ron. It's just at least 2 years, almost
Yep.
like I do in South Korea, just to really know what it feels like to embody the selfless service and the sacrifice that we go through at that time. I'm right there with you on
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that.
Good
Um,
character builder too.
very, very much so, in a much needed time.
Yeah.
How much wisdom did you gain from your experience both at West Point as a student athlete and from serving in the Army? And is it prevalent to your everyday life even to this day?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at West Point, you live by a code, could not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those who do. I think if you ask my kids, the number one rule in the house is to never lie. Um, we took in a another kid who was a teenager years ago, and when they came, when whatever they call to come in to check to make sure you have a good house to host a kid or whatever. So that's one thing they asked him. So what's the number one rule here? He said, "Don't lie." And I think that's important. It's important to teach your kids that and live your life like that. And I'm not saying it's easy. There's a lot of things that go on in life that can create chaos. But I would say the one thing that I've tried to stand by is be a good person, do the right thing. Like I tell my kids, even if you screw up, that you're going to screw up, but be honest about it, deal with the consequences, and move on. Learn from it. And I would say that's probably what I learned most about being a cadet and being in the military. Because the one thing you can't do in the military is screw up and then lie about it. That's not going to do any good for anybody else. You gotta figure it out and do better next time. So you got to learn from those experiences, and I think that's important.
And just a little bit more here about what you learned at West Point, as well as serving in the Army, as well as just, in life in general. What, in your opinion, attributes make a great leader?
Well, I've always said that a great leader is someone who can build people up around him to do better, right? And you know, my daughter right now, for example, she's a basketball player, and I'm kind of living vicariously through her right now because everything we do revolves around basketball. And she's going to go play college basketball. She's a senior right now in high school. But the one thing I try to talk to her about is if you're not making the people around you better, then you're not doing your job as a leader. And I think that's the most important thing that I learned coming out. Because, when I was at West Point, I was the quarterback. So as the quarterback, you are the leader of the offense. I wasn't a captain. Ron Lashinsky was our offensive captain. Ben Kotwika was our defensive captain. Great captains, great leaders. But as the quarterback, you're also supposed to be the leader. And so the one thing that I learned out of that more than anything was how do I make everybody else around me better? I mean, I wasn't a Bryson Daly. I wasn't 225-pound linebacker looking running over people, running the ball 30 times a game like he is. My job was to manage the offense, make sure we did what we were supposed to do, limit the turnovers, limit the penalties, and I felt like I did a pretty good job of that. And by doing that, my leadership was, how can I make this offense run smoother? How can I make, the lineman's job easier by calling the right plays, the running back's job easier by doing, what I'm supposed to do, not just on the field, but also off the field, right? So you have to do that as well. So it's a work ethic that you put into it. It's the leadership that you have in there, showing people how to do it the right way. I think that's extremely important, and I felt like I did a pretty good job of that, and hopefully carried a lot of that onto my kids and let them do the same thing. But I would say that leadership is all about making everybody around you better.
But thank you once again for that, Ronnie. You're
Cool.
inspiring me here today.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Um, as we wrap up this interview here, let's talk about the game. All right, so there's lots of pageantry, tradition, bragger rights are most definitely on the line. As you said, you can brag a lot. You're 3 for 3 in the games that you played, so most definitely. What personally does the Army-Navy game mean to you?
Well, the one thing I like about the Army Navy game is you don't have 5-star, 4-star athletes. You don't have guys with big NIL deals. Of course, we didn't even know what an NIL deal was back when we played. But you don't have guys who really have that aspiration of going to the NFL. So you have hard nose, good character. Um, they're going to outwork you. They're going to out physical you. And the funny thing about the Army Navy game is you have those types of players on both sides of the ball, right? Which means it's going to be a slugfest. It always is. So besides the fact that, and people say, well, a lot of these teams, Ohio State and Michigan, they hate each other. We don't hate Navy. We respect them. We don't hate them. We know what they're going through, just like they know what we're going through. We know in the end, we're all going to be brothers in arms and going to have to defend this country together. So there's not a hatred there that some of these other rivalries have. There's a respect. And I think that's important for the country to see, is that these guys are busting it and giving everything they have against each other, but the respect there for each other is just as great. And I remember when we beat Navy my senior year, that was number 4 in a row. So we had never lost. But unfortunately, the other side, they had never won. And so guys like Clint Bruce, one of the first persons I went and hugged was Clint Bruce, because I knew that he was going to have to live the rest of his life knowing that he never beat Army. And that was going to be tough, because everything that he put into it for 4 years over there and then never coming away with the win. I can't imagine. Luckily I'm 4-0, 3-0 as a starter, never felt that loss. But for him to never feel that win, and then for him to go be a Navy SEAL and protect our country the way he did, that's mad respect for that guy. But I felt bad for him at the time. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trading it. I'm not giving it back to him. Right. But still, there was that feeling of, man, he's never going to feel what I just felt for the 4th time in a row.
Wrapping up here, speaking on the game, one last time, what is your prediction for Army versus Navy?
Well, I think it's going to be a close game. I think they both know each other extremely well. Obviously, they got to shut down our running game with Bryson Daly. We got to shut down their game with their quarterback. He's a stud as well. So 2 good quarterbacks, 2 good running offenses. It's going to come down to turnovers. Going to come down to big plays. Who can hit the big pass play or have the big run play? Maybe even a special teams play. But obviously, I think Army's got the better team. I think Army will pull it out. If I was going to give you a score prediction, I think it's going to be something like 26-20, somewhere around there. Army wins. And who knows? We may end up with another goal line stand like we did a few years ago, where Navy's trying to push it in to win the game at the end, and Army's defense holds them. So I expect a good game. I expect another good game out of both these teams, and it'll be fun to watch.
Most definitely. Thank you for that prediction, Sarah. And you heard it here first from Ronnie McAda. Army is going to take it from Navy this year. Once again, sir, we thank you so much for spending some time with us today, and we wish you all the luck moving forward for the rest of your journey. And any last words, the parting that you want for our viewers to hear?
Well, I just appreciate you having me on, but my last words are always beat Navy.
That's what I'm talking about. Thank you once again, Ronnie McAda, and for Paramount Veterans Network, I'm Will Goshay. Thank you.